What if leadership wasn't just about leading others, but about learning how to lead yourself honestly, sustainably, and without losing who you are in the process? Welcome to this bonus recap episode of Leadership Lessons with Dr. Fredrick Lee II. This isn't just a podcast. It's a space where we unpack what it really takes to lead with emotional intelligence, resilience, and truth in every part of your life. Whether you're managing a team, holding space for your family, advocating in your community, or simply trying to stay afloat in a high pressure world, the lessons here apply to it all. Because emotional intelligence isn't just a workplace tool, it's a life tool. It helps you speak truth with clarity, set boundaries without guilt, recognize burnout before it breaks you, and lead with presence instead of performance. In this episode, we're revisiting episodes 1 through 11, plus the bonus conversations that challenged our thinking, honored our emotions, and pushed us to redefine leadership, not as perfection, but as presence. If you're new here, this is the perfect place to start. And if you've been walking with me from the beginning, this is the moment to reflect, reset, and reclaim the power of what you've already learned. So if you're ready to lead with more clarity, courage, and capacity, subscribe right now to Leadership Lessons with Dr. Fredrick Lee II on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you listen. Because the lessons here, they'll change your leadership. But more than that, they'll change your life. Let's get into it. We started strong in episode 1, leading from within, the power of emotions. When we began this journey in episode 1, not just with definition, but with a challenge to stop chasing perfection and instead lead with presence. We broke down the 5 core elements of emotional intelligence: self awareness, self regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. That episode wasn't about theory, it was about your real life, your team meetings, your relationships, your inner monologue when things go wrong. It was a blueprint for showing up not just with strategy, but with soul. In episode 3, Leading Without Losing Yourself, we confronted something far too common, especially among high achievers and caregivers: overfunctioning. We named what it really is: emotional burnout in disguise. We talked about the invisible labor of doing too much, absorbing too many roles, and calling it good leadership when it's actually self neglect. That episode gave you permission to set emotional boundaries, not to push people away, but to protect your capacity to stay whole. Because boundaries aren't walls, they're clarity. And clarity is what keeps you from leading out of depletion. Episode 8 was about checking your triggers. It took us even deeper into self leadership. We broke the myth that being triggered makes you weak. Instead, we reframed triggers as emotional data, pointing to unresolved stories, unspoken needs, and moments that matter more than we admit. In a world that keeps us reactive, that episode taught us how to stay regulated even under pressure, to notice the heat, not to be consumed by it. Because the most powerful leaders aren't the ones who avoid emotion, they're the ones who manage it with intention. And then in episode 10, it was about the cost of being the strong one. That episode was personal for me and for so many of you. We asked the question most leaders are too afraid to say out loud: what happens when you're tired of holding it all together? We talked about the emotional tax of always being the fixer, the calm one, the one everyone leans on, especially for Black women who are often expected to carry more, feel less, and never fall apart. We grounded that conversation in Black feminist thought, lifting up the voices of Audre Lorde, Patricia Hill Collins, and Bell Hooks. And we reclaimed the radical idea that rest is not laziness, softness is not weakness, emotional honesty is not a liability. This wasn't just an episode, it was a permission slip to be human, to be whole, to be strong without being silent. So if you've ever felt like you're leading on empty, if you've ever ignored your triggers, blurred your boundaries, or carried too much because you didn't want to let anyone down, these episodes weren't just content, they were lifelines. And they're here whenever you need to come back to them. In episode 2, Imposter Syndrome and the Marginalized Leader, we asked a question that too many leaders are still quietly carrying. How do you thrive in spaces not built for you? We pulled back the curtain on the emotional toll of leading while being the only one, the only woman, the only Black person, the only queer voice, the only first-gen professional, navigating environments that weren't designed for your voice, your body, your brilliance. We unpack the daily tightrope of code switching to make others comfortable, overachieving to prove your worth, shrinking yourself just to stay safe. That episode didn't just name imposter syndrome, it named the context that creates it. Because what we often internalize about personal inadequacy is actually structural exclusion in disguise. Then in episode 5, microaggressions in leadership, we dug even deeper into that emotional tax. We didn't just define microaggressions, we explored how they land as death by a thousand cuts, as chronic emotional abrasion, as silent injuries leaders are taught to minimize. Psychological studies have shown that repeated exposure to microaggressions increases cortisol levels, impairs focus, and leads to emotional burnout, especially among Black, Brown, and LGBTQ plus professionals. But we didn't stop at naming the pain. We explored how emotionally intelligent leaders can interrupt the pattern, create psychological safety, and shift the culture without self-sacrifice. Then came episode 9, Silencing the Inner Critic. We turned inward because even when the external world quiets down, there's a voice inside many of us that keeps whispering, "You're not doing enough. They're going to find out you don't belong here. You have to work twice as hard just to be taken seriously." We got personal in that episode. We talked about how internalized oppression and perfectionism disguise themselves as ambition, when really they're rooted in fear. And we gave you tools, those change moves, to rewrite the narrative in your own mind. Because you can't lead with clarity if your inner critic is doing all the talking. Then we did our first bonus episode. How do you speak truth to power without becoming a target? We took on a reality many of you know all too well. We asked, what happens when you finally find your voice, but using it might cost you? That episode offered more than validation. It offered language, strategy, and emotional armor for those navigating the risks of advocacy, especially when the stakes are high and the power dynamics are steep. Because saying what needs to be said as a marginalized leader doesn't just require courage, it requires emotional clarity, it requires calculated wisdom, it requires leadership that is both truthful and tactful. These episodes weren't just conversations. They were survival tools. They were mirrors. They were reminders that your belonging is not up for debate and your voice is not too much. Whether you're navigating a boardroom, a classroom, or your own family system, these lessons are for you. In episode 4, From Trauma to Triumph, we named something that too many workplaces still try to hide behind: professionalism and policy, those toxic environments. We stopped sugarcoating dysfunction. We gave language to the emotional injuries caused by micromanagement, manipulation, gaslighting, and weaponized silence. And most importantly, we gave you tools to recognize red flags, to start your healing, and to reclaim your agency, even in places that try to strip it away. Because survival is not the same as thriving. And every leader deserves to work and lead in a space that doesn't cost them their well being. Then in episode 6, Healing While Leading, we broke a myth so many of us carry: that you have to be fully healed before you can lead, before you can speak, before you can show up with confidence. The truth? Many of us are leading while grieving, while nursing invisible wounds, while holding it together for others, even when we're falling apart inside. That episode reminded you that healing is not a finish line. It's a practice, a daily intentional act of self-preservation and self-leadership. And that you are not disqualified from leadership just because you're still in process. Then came episode 7, The Trauma-Informed Leader. This was where we made it practical. We taught you how to recognize trauma responses in yourself and in your team, avoid re-triggering people with rigid or reactive leadership, create safety without carrying everyone's emotional weight on your back. Trauma-informed leadership isn't just a clinical framework. It's a leadership imperative. It's rooted in 5 foundational principles: safety, trustworthiness, choice, collaboration, empowerment. And in that episode, we walk through how to build that into your team culture without becoming the emotional sponge for everyone around you. Because empathy doesn't mean self-erasure. Compassion doesn't mean exhaustion. And holding space doesn't mean losing yours. Then we rounded out this arc with a bonus episode on social cognitive theory, the psychology of how your environment, your identity, and learned behavior shape how you show up in leadership spaces. We explored how our beliefs about ourselves, many informed in childhood or early work experiences, become scripts that we carry into our professional lives. Things like, I have to do it all myself. If I slow down, I'll fall behind. If I can't show weakness, I'll be replaced. And we challenge those stories because, yes, we're shaped by our past, but with awareness and emotional intelligence, we can reshape the future. That episode was more than a theory lesson. It was a reminder: you are not just a product of your environment. You are a participant in how it evolves. These episodes weren't just reflections on pain. They were maps for resilience, and they gave you language to heal, to lead, and to stop carrying emotional burdens that were never yours to begin with. And then came episode 11, From Burnout to Balance. That episode was a necessary pause for so many of us who have been leading on autopilot, ignoring the signs, and mistaking exhaustion for excellence. We unpacked the World Health Organization's definition of burnout: emotional exhaustion, cynicism or detachment, reduced sense of efficacy. And we gave you change moves, those tangible steps to reclaim rest, set boundaries, and reclaim asking for help as a leadership strength, not a failure. Then in our latest bonus episode, we asked the question, are EQ skills really soft? we challenge the narrative that emotional intelligence is optional. Through studies from Google's Project Oxygen, Harvard Business Review, and the EQI 2.0 model, we made the case that emotional intelligence drives performance, EQ can be measured, and personalized EQ coaching is one of the most strategic investments a leader can make. Emotional intelligence isn't soft, it's smart, it's science backed, and it's essential. So there you have it, episodes 1 through 11, plus the bonus conversations that invited us to lead with more intention, honesty, and emotional intelligence. We've covered everything from burnout to boundaries, from trauma to truth telling, from imposter syndrome to EQ that actually works in the real world. Each episode wasn't just content. It's a conversation you've probably been waiting years to hear. A reminder that leadership isn't just what you do, it's how you show up for yourself, for your people, for the version of you that no longer wants to lead on autopilot. Together, we've uncovered what it means to lead from within, to stop performing and start feeling, to stop proving and start healing. Every lesson offered a piece of the leadership puzzle, real human insights that stretch beyond the boardroom and into how we show up in our families, our friendships, and most importantly, with ourselves. If something resonated, listen again. If something challenged you, write through it. If something empowered you, share it. Let someone else know they're not alone. But don't let the conversation stop here. I want to hear from you. What topics do you want me to cover next? What elements of emotional intelligence are you still curious about? Whether it's self-regulation, empathy, leadership boundaries, or building trust, this podcast is for you. Let's build it together. DM me, leave a comment, or message me directly through the website. And if you're ready to go even deeper, from awareness to transformation, here's your next step. Emotional intelligence isn't just a concept, it's a measurable framework. With the EQI 2.0 assessment, I offer personalized coaching that helps you identify where you're thriving, where stress may be silently shaping your decisions, and how to lead with clarity, confidence, and capacity without burnout. No more guessing, no more patchwork growth, just actionable insight backed by science, tailored for your leadership journey. To explore that, or to make sure you never miss an episode, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen. Because this isn't just content, it's your leadership toolkit. Lead like your healing matters. Lead like your humanity is non-negotiable. And lead like your EQ is your greatest edge. Until next time, stay well, stay whole, and keep leading from within. I'm Dr. Fredrick Lee II, and this has been your Leadership Lessons Recap.